Jessica and Sheikh Khalid's story began as a dream of luxury and adventure, but 48 hours after she landed in Greece, Jessica's excitement turned into terror, and her body was discovered in a hidden cove, revealing a trap more sinister than anyone could imagine. Jessica's inbox pinged with a new message that seemed almost too good to be true. The subject line read, Asterisk, a special invitation just for you. Asterisk curious, she opened it and found photographs of sunlit Greek islands, sparkling blue waters, and grand palaces. The sender called himself Sheikh Khalid, a wealthy man with private estates scattered across Europe. He claimed he was hosting an exclusive wedding on a secluded Greek island and insisted that she, out of all people, had been specially invited. The email was elegant and persuasive, promising luxury accommodations, gourmet meals, and front-row access to a once-in-a-lifetime event. Jessica, a travel blogger who thrived on new experiences, felt a rush of excitement. It was an opportunity that could not only be glamorous, but also provide incredible content for her growing audience. She immediately shared the news with her friends, who were skeptical. They questioned the legitimacy of the invitation, warning her that online strangers often had hidden motives. Their voices of caution were drowned out by visions of crystal-clear waters, grand halls, and chandeliers reflecting sunlight in palatial rooms. Jessica spent hours researching the name, but Sheikh Khalid left almost no digital footprint aside from social media profiles that looked curated to perfection. To her, the lack of information seemed mysterious rather than alarming. It added to the allure of an adventure that felt like stepping into a storybook. Within 24 hours, she booked her flight and prepared her luggage meticulously, packing light dresses, cameras, and accessories for what she imagined would be a week of opulence and cultural immersion. Her excitement grew as she imagined meeting the enigmatic sheikh, attending a grand wedding, and exploring the hidden corners of a Greek island. She did not consider that the same sense of anticipation could also be the calm before a storm, one that would change her life forever. Jessica arrived in Athens just as night had draped the city in shadows. The airport was unusually quiet, almost eerily so, with only a few travelers milling about. As she stepped out of the terminal, a sleek black luxury car waited for her, engine humming softly in the dim light. The driver, a tall man in a dark suit, introduced himself as the wedding coordinator and motioned for her to follow. He spoke little, only giving directions and brief instructions, yet his demeanor was polite and controlled. Jessica slid into the leather seat, feeling the plush interior and the gentle hum of the car as it glided onto the empty streets. She marveled at the thought that she was about to enter a world so different from her usual travels. The journey to the estate took longer than she expected, winding along narrow coastal roads that hugged cliffs and overlooked dark waters. Streetlights were sparse, and shadows danced across the curves of the asphalt, making her uneasy. The driver reassured her with nods and curt explanations, but his eyes rarely met hers. Every now and then, she caught glimpses of abandoned buildings or olive groves bathed in moonlight, beautiful yet unsettling. Her phone's signal flickered and then died entirely, leaving her with no way to check in with anyone back home. Anxiety began to creep in, but she tried to calm herself, telling herself it was just part of traveling in a remote location. After what felt like an eternity, the car finally stopped in front of a massive wrought iron gate. Beyond it, the palace sparkled under strategically placed floodlights, a fortress of white stone perched on the cliffs above the Aegean Sea. Jessica felt a mixture of awe and apprehension as the gates opened with a slow, mechanical creak. She stepped out into the night, her excitement mingling with unease, sensing that this was only the beginning of an experience far stranger than she could have imagined. The palace rose before Jessica like something out of a dream, or perhaps a fairy tale turned sinister. Its white stone walls gleamed under the floodlights, and tall columns framed the grand entrance. A long marble pathway led up to massive doors carved with intricate patterns, and fountains trickled quietly in the manicured gardens. Staff in crisp uniforms greeted her with polite smiles, guiding her inside with quiet efficiency. The interior was even more breathtaking than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, reflecting light across polished marble floors. Tapestries depicting ancient scenes lined the walls, and velvet curtains draped the tall windows. Every detail spoke of immense wealth and careful curation, yet there was a coldness that made Jessica feel watched, as though the beauty was designed to impress and intimidate. As she explored, Jessica noticed small, odd details that unsettled her. Many doors were locked, and some rooms seemed purposefully off-limits. She glimpsed cameras subtly tucked into corners and mirrored surfaces, tracking her movements without her realizing it. The other guests wandered the halls with quiet smiles, their expressions polite but distant, almost anxious. No one seemed to speak freely, and there were sudden silences whenever Jessica approached. A creeping sense of isolation settled over her. Despite the overwhelming grandeur, Jessica could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. She wandered into the ballroom, expecting a warm welcome, but it was empty, echoing with the faint sound of water trickling from a nearby fountain. The air felt heavy, as if the palace itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to make a mistake. She reminded herself to enjoy the moment, telling herself that the anxiety was merely excitement and nerves. Yet in the back of her mind, a nagging question grew louder with each step. Why did such a beautiful place feel so controlled, so secretive, and so dangerous? The palace, she realized, was not just a location. It was the stage for something far more sinister than she could imagine. Sheikh Khalid finally appeared just as the sun began to dip behind the cliffs, casting long shadows across the palace grounds. He was taller than she expected, dressed in flowing white robes that shimmered faintly in the evening light. His presence was commanding, his posture precise, and his eyes seemed to measure Jessica as if he were calculating her every thought. Despite his polished charm, there was an intensity in his gaze that made her uneasy. He welcomed her politely, his voice smooth and controlled, guiding her through the halls with deliberate precision. Every step she took seemed choreographed, and every glance she made was subtly observed. Jessica felt a mixture of flattery and apprehension. She had imagined meeting the enigmatic sheik as a thrilling encounter, yet his aura of authority made her feel small and watched. He spoke little about the wedding itself, focusing instead on instructions and expectations, outlining where she should be and how she should conduct herself. His gestures were polite, yet firm, leaving no room for deviation. The staff followed close behind, responding to subtle cues from Khalid, their movements seamless and practiced. Every aspect of the palace, the wedding, and even her own actions appeared to revolve around his control. Despite the grandeur surrounding her, Jessica began to notice the subtle ways in which the sheik monitored her. Mirrors were positioned strategically, doors seemed to close automatically behind her, and every corridor she wandered down appeared to funnel her toward the areas he wanted her to see. The opulence of the palace did little to comfort her. Instead, it amplified the sense of isolation, making her feel like a guest in a gilded cage. Her excitement began to mingle with unease as she realized that the adventure she had dreamed of might not be an adventure at all, but a carefully orchestrated experience designed to keep her exactly where he wanted her, under his watchful eyes, with no escape in sight. While exploring the palace gardens the following morning, Jessica noticed a small, ornate door tucked behind a row of tall hedges. It was locked with a heavy iron latch, and a subtle sign read "Staff Only." Curiosity tugged at her, but a chill ran down her spine as she heard faint, muffled sounds coming from the other side. They were indistinct at first, like whispers or soft cries, but they grew sharper as she stepped closer. Her heart raced, and she instinctively looked around. The gardens appeared empty, yet the feeling of being watched pressed down on her. She told herself it was her imagination, the echoing walls of the palace amplifying ordinary noises into something sinister. Later that evening, she returned to her room, trying to shake the unease that had settled over her. As she placed her belongings on the bed, she noticed a folded piece of paper tucked under her pillow. Unfolding it, she read the message scrawled in neat, precise handwriting, *, do not wander alone. Curiosity is dangerous. *, the warning made her pulse quicken. She stared at it, unsure if it was meant to scare her as a prank or if it was something far more serious. The luxurious palace suddenly felt suffocating, every corridor narrowing in her mind, every chandelier casting ominous shadows on the marble floors. Jessica tried to rationalize the note, convincing herself that it was a twisted welcome tradition or perhaps a joke by the staff. Yet the unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of her confidence. She couldn't shake the memory of the locked door or the muffled sounds behind it. Her instincts screamed that something was wrong, but excitement and fear collided inside her. Each glance down the empty hallway heightened her awareness, and every shadow seemed to stretch toward her, reminding her that the palace's beauty concealed more than just opulence. It hid secrets that could be dangerous and perhaps deadly. Night fell over the palace, and with it came an oppressive stillness that seemed to settle into Jessica's bones. The corridors, which had felt grand and inviting during the day, now stretched endlessly in dim light, shadows twisting along the walls like living things. The chandeliers cast flickering patterns that made familiar spaces feel unfamiliar, and the soft trickle of fountains echoed unnaturally through the halls. Jessica's excitement had faded, replaced by a creeping anxiety that she could no longer ignore. Every step she took seemed amplified, and each closed door felt like a barrier separating her from safety. She attempted to call home, desperate for contact, only to discover her phone was missing from her bag. Panic rose in her chest. She retraced her steps, searching her room and the corridors, but it was gone, vanished without explanation. The realization hit her hard. She was completely cut off, entirely alone in a place that had once seemed enchanting. The shadows deepened, and distant noises, faint footsteps, whispers, the soft clink of metal, began to unsettle her further. Each sound seemed deliberate, as if someone was following her movements and enjoying her growing fear. Jessica tried to calm herself, telling herself that these were normal palace sounds, echoes in empty hallways, or perhaps staff going about their duties. Yet the sense of being watched persisted, gnawing at her courage. She moved cautiously, hugging the walls, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow, aware that any misstep might bring confrontation. The opulence that had initially impressed her now felt like a trap. Every gilded surface, every mirrored corner seemed designed to ensnare rather than delight. Exhaustion and fear intertwined, making her movements slower, heavier. She realized that escape was not as simple as stepping outside. The palace itself seemed to conspire against her, and the night, once peaceful, had become a landscape of danger where every shadow hid a threat, and every corridor could lead to something worse. The sense of dread that had been building all day boiled over as Jessica realized she could no longer stay in her room. She decided to attempt an escape through the palace gardens, hoping to find an exit that would lead her off the estate. The moonlight barely lit the pathways, casting long, jagged shadows across the hedges and marble fountains. Her heart pounded as she moved quietly, trying not to alert anyone to her presence. Each step seemed louder than the last, the gravel crunching beneath her shoes like a warning to those who might be watching. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the darkness, blocking her path. Jessica froze for a heartbeat, then turned and ran, sprinting across the manicured lawns and weaving between statues and fountains. Her breath came in ragged gasps, adrenaline surging through her veins. She could hear footsteps behind her, fast, relentless, closing the distance. Panic propelled her forward as she navigated the labyrinthine gardens, the moonlight revealing cliffs and shadowed corners. Her mind raced, thinking of every escape route, every possible hiding place. Jessica's foot caught on a protruding stone near the cliff's edge, sending her tumbling forward. She scrambled to regain her balance, heart hammering, staring down at the dark waters below. She could feel the presence of her pursuer just steps behind, relentless and unyielding. The fear that had been simmering inside her erupted into full-blown terror. She realized then that this was not merely a flight of adrenaline-fueled panic. She was trapped in a controlled environment, a palace designed to contain her, and every move she had made had been anticipated. As she paused to catch her breath, Jessica understood the chilling truth. The adventure she had sought had been an illusion, a trap meticulously planned. The grandeur and beauty of the palace, the luxurious invitation, the promise of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It had all been a carefully constructed snare, and now she was running not for thrill, but for her life. Cornered in a secluded courtyard, Jessica's panic reached its peak. The moonlight cast stark shadows across the stone walls, making the space feel smaller, tighter, as if the palace itself were closing in around her. She had thought the gardens offered a possible escape, but now there was no exit in sight. Every path she had considered was blocked, and the quiet that had once seemed peaceful now pressed on her ears like a warning. The air was heavy, carrying the faint scent of salt from the nearby sea and something else she couldn't identify, something metallic, ominous, and threatening. From the darkness, Sheikh Khalid emerged, moving with a calm precision that contrasted sharply with her frantic energy. His expression was composed, almost serene, yet his eyes held a cold calculation that froze her blood. Jessica realized in that instant that this was never a wedding or an invitation for enjoyment. Every luxurious detail, every warm greeting she had received, every moment of anticipation had been orchestrated to bring her here, to make her feel trapped, isolated, and vulnerable. Other guests appeared then, their faces pale and rigid. Some seemed complicit, while others looked as frightened and uncertain as she felt. It became clear that the palace, the wedding, and even the grandeur she had admired were tools of control. Each room, corridor, and doorway had been designed to channel her movements, to monitor her every step, and to prevent any chance of escape. She tried to resist, searching for any opportunity to flee, but physical exhaustion and sheer surprise made her movements sluggish. Every corner she turned, every step she took, seemed to funnel her toward Khalid, toward inevitable confrontation. Jessica understood now that the adventure she had imagined was a lie, a trap set with meticulous planning. The palace's beauty had been nothing more than a facade, masking danger at every turn, and she was at the center of it, powerless to escape. Hours passed in tense uncertainty before the palace staff finally raised the alarm. By then, Jessica's room was empty, her belongings untouched, and her absence noticed only because she hadn't reported for the evening gathering. Panic swept through the estate, with staff and guests searching the halls and gardens, shouting her name into the echoing corridors. The air was thick with fear, but no one found a trace of her. Her disappearance seemed to have occurred in a blink, leaving only confusion and dread behind. Authorities arrived quickly after the call was made, combing the estate and nearby cliffs for signs of her. CCTV footage revealed only fleeting shadows, a blur of movement through corridors, and a glimpse of a figure dragging something heavy. Nothing else was captured, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. The palace, previously admired for its grandeur, became a scene of suspicion and horror. Reporters began circling the island, whispering about mysterious figures, unverified rumors of a wealthy sheik, and the sudden disappearance of a young woman whose only crime had been to trust an online invitation. The remaining guests were interviewed separately, their stories inconsistent, their fear palpable. Some admitted seeing Khalid move with deliberate control over every guest, while others insisted they had observed nothing unusual. Pieces of the puzzle refused to fit neatly together. Local authorities expanded the search beyond the estate, combing cliffs, beaches, and hidden coves. Each passing hour heightened the urgency and panic. As the investigation unfolded, whispers of Sheikh Khalid's past began surfacing. Locals spoke of prior incidents, strange visitors who had vanished, and rumors of elaborate schemes targeting unsuspecting travelers. Jessica's disappearance, initially thought to be a mysterious accident, was starting to reveal darker truths. The island, once a destination of beauty and luxury, had become a stage for fear, deception, and a chilling game in which Jessica had been the unwilling player, her fate hanging on the edge of revelation. 2 days after her arrival, the island awoke to a grim discovery. Fishermen patrolling a hidden cove along the rugged coastline found a body washed up among jagged rocks. Identification confirmed the worst. It was Jessica. The serene blue waters that had seemed so inviting now bore the evidence of a horrific crime. Autopsy reports revealed strangulation, with injuries indicating a desperate struggle. She had fought with everything she had, but her strength and courage had not been enough to overcome the calculated control of her captor. The palace, the invitations, and the promise of luxury, all of it had been a meticulously crafted trap. Investigators uncovered the truth about Sheikh Khalid. He was not the wealthy, charming host he claimed to be. Multiple identities, fake social media profiles, and carefully staged invitations were part of an elaborate scheme to lure unsuspecting women from around the world. The grand estate, once a symbol of beauty, had served as a cage designed to manipulate and control, leaving victims isolated and powerless. Authorities combed through the palace and its surroundings, finding evidence of planning and coercion. Staff and accomplices were questioned, though many claimed ignorance, insisting they had followed instructions without knowing the full extent of the plot. Every detail pointed to premeditation, with each step designed to prevent escape and ensure compliance. The story of Jessica's final hours emerged gradually, pieced together from fragments of evidence, witness accounts, and surveillance. Her death sent shockwaves across social media and news outlets, a stark warning to those drawn to promises of luxury and adventure. Jessica's story became a symbol of vulnerability and caution, a reminder that appearances can deceive. The island's beauty, the allure of an exotic invitation, and the grandeur of the palace could not mask the dark reality behind the Sheikh's schemes. Her tragic fate served as a chilling testament. Some invitations hide secrets so deadly, the price of curiosity can be life itself.